In January 1933, Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany, opening the door for him to become Führer 18 months later, dictator of a modern European state. So how did that happen? How did Hitler become Chancellor? This video explains how Hitler came to power in 4 clear reasons. Not because Germans were uniquely evil, not because democracy simply vanished overnight, but because a series of political failures, economic crises, and calculated decisions allowed Hitler to come to power legally. Charisma and popular appeal. Hitler was an extremely effective political communicator. He offered simple answers to complex problems. Germany had lost the First World War. The economy was unstable. Many people felt humiliated by the Treaty of Versailles. Hitler gave people someone to blame, someone to follow, and something to believe in. His speeches were emotional, theatrical, and designed to make individuals feel part of something larger. He spoke about national rebirth, strength, and unity, themes that resonated deeply in a society shaken by defeat and instability. Crucially, Hitler also looked modern. The Nazis used mass rallies, radio broadcasts, posters and symbols. Their slogans were simple, and the message targeted different groups of voters within Germany. Politics became a performance, and Hitler was good at it. But charisma alone doesn't explain power. Millions had heard him speak, yet the Nazi share of the vote in 1928 was only 2%. So why did support grow in the 1930s? Failure of other parties and the Weimar system. The Weimar Republic was democratic, but it was also fragile. Germany used proportional representation, which meant lots of parties, weak coalition governments, and frequent elections. Between 1919 and 1933, Germany had over a dozen governments. This made it difficult to take decisive action, especially during crises. Mainstream parties failed in 2 key ways. First, they failed to cooperate. Left-wing parties, especially the Social Democrats and Communists, spent more time fighting each other than defending democracy. Second, they failed to inspire confidence. When unemployment rose and living standards collapsed, democratic politicians appeared weak, divided, and out of touch. This created space for extremist parties, both communist and Nazi, who promised strong leadership and clear solutions. Importantly, many Germans did not vote Nazi because they loved Hitler. They voted Nazi because they'd lost faith in everyone else. But even then, the Nazis never won a majority in a free election. Economic crisis and desperation. Hitler's rise cannot be understood without the Great Depression. In 1929, the Wall Street crash triggered a global economic collapse. Germany was hit especially hard because it relied heavily on American loans. The results were devastating. By 1932, 6 million Germans were unemployed. Businesses collapsed. Welfare systems were overwhelmed. For many families, democracy became associated with hunger, insecurity, and fear. Economic crisis doesn't automatically produce dictators, but it does radicalize politics. The Nazis exploited this brilliantly. As we have mentioned, they promised jobs, protection from communism, national recovery. They tailored messages to different groups. Workers were promised employment. Middle-class voters were promised stability. Elites were promised order. As economic conditions worsened, Nazi support surged. Not because everyone believed in Nazi ideology, but because desperation narrowed their choices. Still, even at the peak of popular support in 1932, the Nazis failed to secure a majority. So how did Hitler actually get into office? Helped into power by conservative elites. This is the most important and often misunderstood reason. Hitler did not seize power alone. He was invited in. By 1932, Germany was effectively being ruled by presidential decree, not the Reichstag. Key conservative figures believed democracy had failed. Men like Franz von Papen, President Paul von Hindenburg. They didn't like Hitler, but they believed they could use him. Their thinking was simple. The Nazis had mass support, conservatives had experience and authority. Together, they could control the failing political system. Von Papen famously believed Hitler could be boxed in. The backstabbing and failures of previous chancellors like von Papen and General Schleicher meant that by 1933, there were few other options left to President Hindenburg. In January 1933, Hindenburg appointed Hitler Chancellor in a government dominated by conservatives, not Nazis. But this was a fatal miscalculation, which put Hitler in a position to dismantle the system from within. So how did Hitler become Chancellor? Not because of one cause, but because of 4 key reasons: personal charisma and propaganda, failure of democratic parties, economic collapse and desperation, conservative elites who thought they could control him. The most chilling lesson in this, democracy didn't fail at one dramatic moment. It was weakened, compromised, and then handed over. It shows us how systems fail when fear, division, and short-term thinking take over. How did Hitler actually become Führer? That's for a future video. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button.